Hi, in today's class I am going to solve the problems of income from house property. Let me explain the first problem of income from house property. Find out the gross annual value in the following cases. Property A, B, C, D, E. These are the house properties. Then municipal value of these houses. Then fair rent is given. Rent received of these all houses. And standard rent. First one is a not applicable. NA means it is a not applicable. No standard rent for first house. And for other house 11,000, 14,000, 12,000 and 24,000 is the standard rate. The question is you have to find out the gross annual value. So before starting the calculation of gross annual value, first you have to categorize the house property. Means first you have to find out the nature of house property. Whether house property comes under let out property or self-occupied property. There are only two divisions under income from house property or under types of house property. One is a let out property and another is a self-occupied property. For from the format point of view or from the provision point of view, there are only two division. One is a let out property and another is a self-occupied property. The property which used for residential purpose by the SSA is called self-occupied property. The property which has been let out for a rent to other persons by the SSA is called let out property. Now, in this problem, there are five properties A, B, C, D and E. So before starting calculation, first you have to find out the nature of property. Now property A, whether it is a self-occupied or let out property. See here in particulars, rent received is given. Rent received is given for all the houses A, B, C, D and E. So whenever rent received is given for all the houses, then it signifies that all the five properties were let out properties. The five properties let out property. A is also let out because rent is given, and B is also let out because rent received is given. C is also let out property. D as well as E let out property because rent received is given. So therefore here all the nature of all five property is a let out property because rent received is given. So now we have to find out the gross annual value as per the provisions of let out property, or we have to find out the gross annual value as per the format of let out property. Now all the five properties are let out properties. The format for the calculation of gross annual value, the first comes municipal value, then fair rental value, then standard rental value, then expected rental value, then rent received, then gross annual value. This is a format for the calculation of gross annual value. The question is for calculation of gross annual value. Now first part of the calculation is municipal value, annual municipal value of all the houses 10,000 which is given in the problem. And next is a fair rental value which is 12,000, 12,000, 13,000, 18,000 and 21,000. This is also given in the problem, both municipal value as well as fair rental value which are given in the problem, just entering here. Then standard rent also given in the problem. It is for first house it is not applicable. Then for other house 11,000, 14,000, 12,000 and 24,000. Now the first calculation is a expected rental value under gross annual value. So before calculation of gross annual value, you have to find out the expected rental value with the help of municipal value, fair rental value and standard rental value. Then how to find out expected rental value? Municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is higher but not exceeding standard rental value, is called as a expected rental value, which I have explained under the category of classification of house property and even while explaining the format or structure of let out property. So there I have given the provision related to expected rental value. But again I repeat, how to find out expected rental value? There is a provision, municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is higher but not exceeding standard rental value, is called as a expected rental value. So in this problem, property A, for property A, higher of first two, municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is the highest. Okay, so higher is a 12,000 is the highest, so therefore 12,000 is the expected rental value. So here standard rent is not applicable. So whenever the standard rent is not applicable, then higher of municipal value or fair rental value is called as a expected rental value. Municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is the highest, is expected rental value whenever there is no standard rental value. Now see the property B. Municipal value 10,000, fair rent 12,000. The higher of these two, highest, 10,000 or 12,000, whichever is highest. Next, this higher value you have to compare with the standard rent, whichever is the lowest. The first highest, next you have to consider lowest. So that is called as a expected rental value. So 11,000, 10,000 or 12,000, whichever is highest. Then 12,000 is highest, 12,000 or 11,000, whichever is the lowest. That is a expected rental value. See the property C. The 10,000 is a municipal value and 13,000 is a fair rental value. And first you have to see the higher of two, highest value. Then that highest value you have to compare with the standard value. There you have to see the lowest value. The first highest, 10,000 or 13,000, whichever is highest. So 13,000 is the highest, and this 13,000 to be compared with the 14,000, then whichever is the lowest is considered as a gross annual expected rental value. 13,000 or 14,000, whichever is the lowest is expected rental value. 10,000 or 13,000, whichever is highest. 13,000 is highest. 13,000 or 14,000, whichever is the lowest. So 13,000 is the lowest. So that is the expected rental value. And property D, 10,000 is a municipal value and fair rental value is 18,000, whichever is the highest. First you have to compare the highest. The higher is 18,000 and this 18,000 or standard rent, whichever is the lowest. So lowest is 12,000. So 12,000 is the expected rental value. And property E, 10,000 or 21,000, whichever is the highest. The higher is 21,000, 10,000 or 21,000, whichever is the highest. Highest is 21,000 and then 21,000 or 24,000, whichever is lowest. So 21,000 is lowest. So these are the expected rental value of the property A, B, C, D and E. See, in case of expected rental value, that should not be more than standard rental value. That is the clause says. Municipal value or fair rental value, whichever is higher but not exceeding the standard rental value. Limit is a standard rental value. If it is more than standard rental value, then standard rent itself is the expected rental value. So in all the cases, the expected rental value is not more than standard rental value. Either it is a less than standard rental value or it is equal to standard rental value. See the first property, there is no standard rental value. Higher of 2 is a expected rental value. Standard rent is not applicable. In second one, standard rent itself equal to expected rental value itself is equal to standard rental value. And third, it is a lesser than standard rental value. And fourth one, again it is equal to standard rent. And fifth house property, expected rental value is lower than standard rental value. It means it should not be more than standard rental value. It can be less than standard rental value or it can be equal to standard rental value. So that is the clause of expected rental value. So this is the first stage. In case of calculation of gross annual value. So to find out the gross annual value of any let out property, first we have to find out the expected rental value. The next is a rent received. The rent received is given for first house, it is 11,000, then second house also 11,000, 15,000 for third house, and fourth house again 15,000, and fifth house it is 18,000. These are the values which are given in the problem. Rent received is given in the problem, so that has been entered here: 11,000, 11,000, 15,000, 15,000, and 18,000. Now the next stage, the second stage, is a calculation of gross annual value. See, there are two provisions for the calculation of gross annual value. First one, expected rental value or rent received, whichever is higher whenever there is a no vacancy period and unrealized rent. Expected rental value or rent received, whichever is higher if there is no unrealized rent and vacancy period, then higher of that two is considered as a gross annual value. See, I have explained that provisions under the category of a classification of house property, as well as while explaining the format of a let out house property or let out property. Gross annual value, there are two clauses, two provisions to find out the gross annual value. First one, you have to compare expected rent with the rent received, and whichever is highest is called as a gross annual value, but whenever there is no unrealized rent and vacancy period. If there is a unrealized rent and vacancy period, then rent received itself is the gross annual value, means there is no comparison. If there is a vacancy period of a house property, or if there is an unrealized rent of a house property, then gross annual value is equal to rent received. So if there is a vacancy period in a problem, or if there is an unrealized rent, then rent received is equal to gross annual value, or rent received itself is the gross annual value. If there is no vacancy period and if there is no unrealized rent, then expected rental value or rent received, whichever is higher, is a gross annual value. See, in this problem, no vacancy period is given, no unrealized rent is given. So both the concept I have explained about the vacancy period as well as a unrealized rent. Unrealized rent means the rent which could not be realized by the owner from the tenant is called as unrealized rent, whereas vacancy period means the term during which house was not let out in the previous year is called as a vacancy period. The house was not occupied by any person during the previous year. The term during which the house unoccupied by any other person, then such term is called as a vacancy period. So if vacancy period and unrealized rent is given, then gross annual value equal to rent received. Otherwise, expected rental value or rent received, whichever is highest, is a gross annual value. So in this problem, no vacancy period, no unrealized rent. So therefore, we have to apply the first provision of gross annual value, that is expected rental value or rent received, whichever is highest, is a gross annual value. So therefore 12,000 is a gross annual value in case of property A. 12,000 or 11,000, whichever is highest, 12,000 is highest. And in case of property B, 11,000 or 11,000, whichever is highest, both the values are same. So therefore 11,000 itself is a gross annual value. And property C, 13,000 is expected rental value and rent received is a 15,000, whichever is the highest, higher is a 15,000. So 15,000 is a gross annual value. And in case of property D, 12,000 or 15,000, whichever is the highest is a 15,000. So 15,000 is a gross annual value. And in case of property E, 21,000 or 18,000, whichever is the highest, the higher is here, it is a 21,000. So make the corrections. I have written 18,000, entered as 18,000. The higher is a 21,000. So here the gross annual value 21,000, not 18,000. Okay, the higher of two, expected rental value or rent received, whichever is the highest is a gross annual value. So that is about today's class, and it will give you information, or in this problem I have explained about how the gross annual value to be calculated under let out properties. Thank you very much.